So if you are in your photography journey, or maybe even a small business journey, there's a season in your life and in your business where you could start considering a very scary thought. And that is, can I take this full time? Can this be my main source of income? Can I support my family and go full time and be a full-time photographer? There's so much to consider. There's so much that's at risk, but there's also so much reward. And so I'm going to break down all my thoughts about when is the right time to go full time and what are some things to consider if you're in that season of making that decision. I think it's easier to process all of this if you break down the thoughts and the risk and the motivations into 3 different categories: financial, your time, and mental. Okay, so the first one we're going to start with is financial. And oftentimes this is the only category and the only thing that people think about when they're trying to consider, can I go full time? Can I make it full time? And it makes sense. They're thinking about the numbers. They're thinking about how much do I make? How much do I have to make? Can I make this work? But there's so much that goes into working for yourself that you don't realize until you are in the throes of running your own small business and being solely responsible for bringing in the income. No one's handing you a paycheck and no one's going to give you money every 2 weeks. You have to think about your side hustle money as real money. I'm not bashing anybody, but I see it when people buy courses. A lot of people pay for courses out of PayPal, and they joke about how I can buy this course because my husband doesn't even know it's in my business PayPal account because it's just a side thing and it's not a part of our real money. But if it's going to become this is your job, then it's not just play money. It's not just fun money. This is going to support your family. So you have to start thinking about, what did that meal cost on the road? What did that gas tank to get up to DC to shoot that wedding? What did that cost? What did it cost to get that lens service that I dropped in the middle of the street on accident? All of that goes into taking away from your profits. You just have to be more realistic about your side hustle money and not just thinking like, I love this. Can I live off of it? It's a very different concept. And I am a creative. I get excited. I get inspired about things. It's very easy for me to just will myself to this is going to work. But we got to be certain that it will. When I first went full time, I was leaving college. I had no dependents. I had no children. I had a mortgage on a house. My mortgage on a house was $714. So there was a lot of low risk. But that would not be my case now. I have a lot more responsibility now. Something that I would recommend if you are getting close to the season of wanting to take this full time, financially, if you have a full-time job, and you're making side hustle money from this thing that you love, let's take advantage. Because I don't know, you could go full-time in 6 months, or you could go full-time in 2 years. It might be helpful to make a decision based off of a savings goal. Can your side hustle produce a backup fund of your living expenses for 6 months? Because if it can, and you can be that strategic with that side hustle money, and you can live below your means, and you can take your income maybe from your full-time job and buffer up this savings account, then all of a sudden making the jump, you have 6 months to be able to recoup the money that was the difference. And if you can be strategic, it's really, I talked to a lot of people about this when I used to do one-on-one coaching. It can be really encouraging and motivating to think about your financial situation as I am headed towards a goal of 2025. I want to have 30 grand saved from working 2 jobs, side hustle and this job. That's my permission slip. That's when I get to go full time because I have 30 grand of a buffer to be able to support myself and get this thing off the ground. Okay, so another category to consider. Financial is the most boring and it's the most overwhelming. So we did that. Let's push that aside. Let's talk about something fun. Your time. It's fun and it's stressful. If you're even considering going full-time with a side hustle, it means that your mind works in a way where you recognize you don't always have to follow the standard trajectory of the rest of the world. You could say, I'm not going to show up at my 9 to 5. I'm going to pivot and be an entrepreneur and be in charge of my own time. That's equally exciting and it's scary because a lot of times you leave a 9 to 5 thinking, oh, it's soul sucking. It's taking away all of me. And you enter a situation where you're running a business and no one's telling you when to clock out and no one's telling you, oh, you've done enough. It is continuous. You've seen the memes, you've seen the reels that are like, so glad I left my 9 to 5 to work 24/7 on my business and have financial freedom and freedom in my life. There is some truth to that, right? That you got to have a lot of self-discipline to be able to run a small business and not let it suck more of your time than the 9 to 5. But here's the beauty of it. If you are doing a side hustle, and you're making a decent amount of money that's, like, hey, I could see a future of this growing and supporting my life. You do have to consider that you're only giving a small percentage of your time to growing this business, and it is succeeding. It's not succeeding enough to support you right now, but you do have to envision that if you're giving 10 hours a week to a side hustle because you have 40 hours a week in a full-time job, when you do switch, there will be a significant increase in growth just merely because you can give your full attention to your dream. The most successful people that I've ever coached that have gone full time have been in a place where they're about to crack because they're so busy with their side hustle. There's so much work and so much opportunity that they're barely hanging on. They've got a full-time job and they're shooting 20 weddings a year, and it's a lot. But they're in a really safe place to make the jump because look at the potential, look at the engagement, look at the marketing power that's already happening with such a low amount of input hours because of their full-time job. That they are a little bit closer to the safety zone. Whereas if you are shooting 5 weddings a year because you're only getting about 10 inquiries and you book half of them, well, that's a great booking rate. But if you're only getting 5 weddings a year as a side hustle, you've got a much larger gap from being able to create a lucrative business that will replace your full-time income. We got to shorten that gap. We got to get you a little bit closer to equaling your salary from your full-time job before you make the leap. I think it's important as a parent or as someone who maybe you are a caregiver for a family member. Maybe you are in a season of life where you have a lot of other volunteer responsibilities in other parts of it. I don't know what your story is, but you have to realistically look at your time and think, do I have the time, even if I got rid of a full-time job, to be able to contribute to the business in a way that will allow it to produce what I need it to produce? So when you're thinking about time as a whole, I think in general, this is something that can be so exciting because you're like, if I give up my 9 to 5, I'm going to have so much time and so much freedom. And you will. You want to travel from Tuesday to Thursday? That's great. Go ahead and do it because no one's telling you can't, and you can work and edit on the road. There is truly a gift in that. And I don't know. Actually, this year is the first year we have gone back to having a strict schedule because Michael's working at the school full time that we started. And it is a massive shift to have responsibilities like that. It is very limiting. So there's beauty in having the freedom of time. But the other side of the coin is there is a lot more time that is needed to make a small business successful than most people ever imagine, especially if you're taking a side hustle and making it your main thing. So there's a lot to consider based on your life circumstances and based on the realities of being an entrepreneur, that there's so much freedom, but there's also so much demand. All right, so we're moving on to the part that I personally like to talk about the most, which is the mental side of things. The financial and the time piece, I feel like I tried to paint a realistic picture for you of like, it's not always rainbows and unicorns. It can be hard, and there's a lot of things to consider if I'm being completely honest. So I feel like I was realistic with that, but the mental side is more subjective in a lot of ways. What I mean by that is that there's a lot of different places you could be across the board. But when I think about a lot of people who would sit in front of me during coaching sessions and talk about how miserable they were in their part-time job, full-time job, it is costing them something great to continue to live in the misery of getting up every day, going to a soul-sucking job that they don't love. And yes, the financial side of things has to be considered because it'll be even more stressful and soul-sucking if you get $30,000 in debt your first year as a full-time photographer because you didn't consider all the risk. But there is something also to consider. We need to get super serious about this and how to make this a reality for you if you are in an anxiety-producing position in a job that you absolutely hate. Some people get to a place in their business where they're inspired and they're excited and they love what they're doing. They cannot wait to shoot, but they stay in the side hustle phase so long that they get so comfortable but also so miserable in their full-time job that they quite honestly just never pull the trigger and make the switch. They never cross the threshold of saying, I need to go for this for me because I'm not happy. There's a quote that we always hear in coaching when we're doing our own personal coaching, and it's by Soren Kierkegaard, some philosopher, probably butchered his name, but he talks about people settle for a certain level of despair and call it happiness. And I feel like a lot of creative people do that with their side hustles. And instead of going through the hard work of trying to go through the financial side, the time side, how can I make this a reality? They sit in the comfort of their 9-to-5 too long, and they just settle for what they don't love. They settle for something that doesn't bring them joy. And that does actually cost you something. You think, oh, I don't have any risk. I'll just sit here a little bit longer. But it is actually costing you peace, joy, the love of getting up in the mornings, which is significant. So my encouragement to you is to recognize that it is costing you something in your soul and in your mental space and in the joy of your life to not consider, how can I pursue something I'm more passionate about? There is freedom in that, and there is a way to make it work, but it's going to take a lot of work. Some people will cross the threshold and some people will not, but it's important to recognize, are you settling for a certain level of despair and calling it happiness? Or are you noticing, I'm in despair, I don't like my reality, and I'm going to take a jump and a leap very responsibly, and I'm going to try to pursue this. I think that's available for more people than they ever imagined, but they have to cross the threshold. The other side of it is you have to be honest mentally about what is on the other side of a 9-to-5. Because for some people who are very social, they're extroverts, they need people in their life. There are a lot of people that leave 9-to-5s and they actually find themselves incredibly lonely and depressed working from home every day because they see clients once or twice a week, but that's not the same as going in and seeing a familiar face in a cubicle next to you. And you might realize that you have a lot of joy from that type of community and you're just going to completely lose that part of your life. Entrepreneurial living can be very, very lonely. And so that's something else to consider. It's just a realistic view of the whole thing. So last but not least, as you're making this decision and you're processing all of these things, ask yourself, why are you trying to consider this in the first place? Why do you want to go full-time as a photographer or a small business owner? Is it for financial reasons? Is it for freedom of time? Is it because you truly are miserable doing what you're doing? You know that there's something more that needs to come out of you. You have a higher contribution to give the world than how you're spending your time right now. Depending on your situation, it's going to look different for everybody that's listening to this. And so asking yourself why will allow you to get clearer about your priorities and which parts of this you're going to sacrifice in order to make your ultimate dream happen. So ultimately, I wish I could give you a calculator of how to just type in some numbers and some ideas and some thoughts and just magically poof, here is your answer. Go do it. There's no solution like that. This is going to take a lot of personal diving in, and there's always going to be risk, and there's never going to be 100% guarantee. But some of the best things in life are the things that take a risk. The most rewarding things in my life have been things that have taken some risk. So I encourage you to dive into the consideration of, is this possible for you? Is it right for you? Is it the right fit? If you think, oh my gosh, I need to have more conversations about this, I need to talk to other people who are in my season of life that are considering this alongside of me, we have a space where we love for photographers to have real life conversations about real life problems. It is considered the home base of my entire business. KJ All Access is basically a membership for photographers who are serious about their journey, but also want to learn from me, have access to me, and see me shoot and learn from me behind the scenes from weddings and portrait sessions. So it's the most affordable way to, one, get to ask me questions during coaching calls every month, and two, the most affordable way to connect with some of the most amazing photographers from around the world in a curated KJ community. All linked below. Excited for you to dive in. If you're going to dive into the community, I will see you there. Ask questions, get into groups that pertain to you. That's where I hang out these days. So I would love to connect with you there, but if not, I'll just connect with you on here and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.